Hey everyone, Leo with the Dreaming Tree, and welcome to the assembly video for our autumn leaf and feathers wreath. It's that time of year again, fall of course, and I'm so excited to start crafting fall related items. And then of course we've got Halloween, which then transitions into Thanksgiving and then Christmas. I think personally it's the best time of year to get into the studio and make some things. So today we're putting together a brand new wreath that features, of course, some autumn leaves, as well as kind of intermixed with some peacock feathers. So I have everything here cut out in front of me, and I've done a lot of pre-prep because a lot of this stuff is very repetitive and redundant. So there's going to be times during this video where you'll want to kind of pause and just finish up the stuff that you need to finish up, and then kind of continue along with the rest of the assembly. So let me just go over this real quick just to show you. Basically, we've got the foundation for the wreath. We'll kind of go over all this stuff here, okay? The backmost layer is going to be made up of 4 sections like this, okay? And you can see I've already put 3 of them together. That's going to make the first layer, okay? Then after that, we've got 4 sections that look like this. Okay, and I'm obviously not gluing this down yet, but you kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. And then we have 4 sections that look like this. And those are going to go inside here. And then we have, we have a beautiful peacock feather. There's going to be 2 sections like this. That's going to go down here. There's going to be one on this side. And we'll adorn that with, we have these really pretty little individual little peacock feathers. Okay, and those are going to be kind of dangling off, and then I've got a little bow. So anyway, what I want to show you here is some of the stuff that I did off camera to get everything prepped. There's really nothing that I'm going to skip. It's just I'm not going to do it 4 times. Okay, so we're going to start off with this layer here. Now this is the back layer and this is the top layer, and you don't need to do anything with the back layer, and actually you don't really need to do anything with the top layer if you don't want, but I highly recommend taking some time and inking these, as it will really add to the overall aesthetic. So I've got my handy ink applicator, and I've got my Memento inks, my 2 usual go-tos. If you want help or need to locate these items, I would suggest taking a look at either the supply list, or if you want, you can download the Dreaming Tree app from the Apple App Store as well as Google Play. And we have both of these items linked in the supplies section, right on the main homepage of the app. So right when you load up the app, you'll see it there at the bottom, supplies, and these 2 items are there. So again, this is the most time-consuming part of this, I would say. So if you want to ink, definitely ink, but know that you're going to invest a little bit of time in this process. So all I'm doing right now is I'm grabbing my orange, this is a dye ink, and literally just kind of grazing the surface right along the edge of each of these little leaves. Now, depending on how hard I press down on the ink pad, also how new your ink pad is, and how hard I press down on the actual paper will determine how much ink I'm actually going to leave on the paper as I go through this process. So if you're unsure, because what I just mentioned is basically a lot of different variables. If you're not sure how yours is going to turn out, I would highly recommend avoiding testing it on your final project. I would recommend grabbing a scrap piece of paper, and especially you could use the scrap piece of paper from this actual piece and test it on that. See how it looks based on how hard you're pressing down on the ink pad, how hard you're pressing down on the paper, how new or old your ink pad is. That's all going to play into how much ink is going to end up on your paper. Okay, so one other thing too if you press down on your ink pad and you look at your ink pad and that thing is literally caked, I'll show you an example. Cool thing about the Memento inks is they have this little layer that almost protects. There, you can see how deep that is. Now this is not the ink by Memento. It's completely different. That's Hampton Arts. I don't even know if they make that anymore, but you see the difference there. Okay, so if you can still see a little bit of, the applicator, just little white specks in there, and it's not completely caked, then you know you've got a good consistency. But if by chance that you press that down and you get a whole heck of a lot of ink on there, chances are when you go to apply it on your paper, it's going to be very, very deep. So I've got a fly hanging out with me today. I hope he likes to paper craft because I will put him to work. Yeah, just beware. And if you're not sure, test it out on a scrap piece of paper before you spend all this time cutting everything out, and then you go to apply your ink and all of a sudden you've got a result that you're not happy with. So I certainly would recommend doing a test. You might as well. You've got nothing to lose. You've already got the scrap paper. You're already in your craft room. Last thing you want to do is have to spend more time cutting out additional pieces to finish your project because you goofed up on the inking and way too much came off onto your project. Now that sort of transitions into just being aware of what you're doing and really focusing, and that's how you're going to get the best result. And that's, I see it all the time. Fortunately, pretty much everyone in our group, have bad days, and self-admittedly, sometimes you guys say, well, I goofed up on this and that happens. It even happens to me. So it's not like I'm perfect, but just focus and be conscious of every little step that you're doing. And in doing that, you'll kind of, separate yourself from all the other stuff that's going on in your head, most of which is probably negative and repetitive, just based on how things are going in the world. So this is a great opportunity to escape. Okay, so I've got that inked. All right, now again, it's optional. Highly recommend it though. And you can see here that this is no longer flat. I actually trained this to give it a little bit of dimension, and I will show you that process here. So we're gonna glue this down. Don't worry about this little score mark there. I'll explain what that's for later. But we're gonna glue that down, and as it's drying, we're going to actually start bending and shaping this piece. So I'm kind of just doing one little segment at a time, trying to get my glue out to the edges as far as I can go. And you don't want to overdo it on the glue here, but at the same time, you want to be a little more generous than usual, only because we've got a lot of surface area to cover, and we don't want that glue drying out before we actually get a chance to apply it to our backing layer. Okay, so I just get some glue out of there. It's kind of getting stuck. Okay. Apply our glue on there, and then you're going to repeat this process 3 more times after I'm done here. But what I did for the first 3, I realized that lining up the center leaf is probably the easiest way to make sure that everything kind of lines up. So just make sure that's in place, and then before you press down all over here, just make sure that everything is sitting right in place, and you know what, that worked out perfectly. Okay, so that looks great, and I had my handy brayer somewhere. There it is. If you've got one of these are great for pressing down on a large surface area. Would highly recommend doing that. Okay. All right, so now it's still drying. So what I was doing is I was kind of holding down here and then just kind of lifting this up towards me. Now you can see this, that's just flopping around. That is probably where I initially put my glue, and that section started to really dry before I was able to get it in place. So I'm just gonna grab a scrap piece of paper, put some glue on the scrap piece and just kind of paint it on the back of this section here, and then press that down. And there we go. Okay, so I'm kind of holding it down here, and I am pressing down on this as I kind of peel it towards me. You can see I'm kind of pulling it towards me a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna do that here too, and that just is not sticking either. I did not have this problem before. So I am going to add a little bit of glue to the back of that and press that down. And again, as it's drying, I'm going to hold down here and just start pulling, probably just roughly from the center of this and up, all the way up to the top, the tip of the little, oh, those are feathers or leaves? I think those are leaves. Okay, and I'm going to go over here and do the same thing. And this glue is partially set, not fully. So actually, if we do this while it's setting, it will maintain that shape even better. Okay, because that glue is going to almost dry in that position. We don't have to worry about this flattening out at any point. Unless, of course, you get a lot of heat and humidity, and then the glue kind of, well, softens. But I don't think we're going to run into that problem. Okay, so that's how that turns out. Okay, now you can see how that's curling just slightly. You don't need a lot. And then once we get this in place, if we decide we want to curl it a little more, everything should be nice and dry, so we can definitely do that. Okay, so again, you're going to repeat this process 3 more times because we need a total of 4 of these. And again, it's optional. If you want to ink, you can. I think it looks great with the ink, so I would highly recommend it. All right, so next up, the next layer is this layer here, and you can see that I've already done 3. Okay, and with this one, it's going to be the same process. I'm not going to show the inking on this because it's pretty much the same thing I showed you before. I inked just well, because you can see here, this brown piece is going to go on top of the red. Okay, so I didn't bother inking all the way down here. It's going to get covered up anyway. So save yourself some time and just focus on this section and up. And then down here, of course, you do want to ink that if you plan on inking. Okay, so that said, just like the previous layer, we're going to go ahead and start applying our glue. Now, again, I'm going to go a little bit heavier on this section here where I started, because I know that by the time I get to the other end, that glue is already starting to kind of set, and that's why it was peeling off and not drying, or not sticking to the back layer on that one side. You can see that the other side, the side that I finished on, actually stayed nice and secure for us and didn't peel off. So now I'm going a little bit lighter on the glue here as I get towards the end, because I just don't need as much. I'm not worried about it drying out. Okay, so there we go, we got that. And just like we did before, I'm going to focus on getting the center leaf aligned. And typically, if you get that spot on, the rest of it just kind of falls into place. And you know what? If you do get a little bit of the back layer showing, shouldn't happen, but if it does, it's actually not that bad. It almost looks like it's got some highlights to it, and that actually will photograph nicely and look really cool. Okay, so flatten that out. Yeah, I do have a little bit of red showing there, and that could also be because of the machine and the way that it cut it. I'm not really worried about it. It's still going to look great. Okay, so as it's drying, just like we did before, I'm going to hold this down right here, and I'm going to start just kind of curling it and bending it towards me ever so slightly. I don't want to overdo it, just a little bit. And this is, again, the opportune time to do this while that glue is still somewhat in its transitional state, getting ready to completely dry. Okay. So we'll get that in place. There we go. All right. Yeah, so just like I said, give it some ink if you want. I recommend it. And put this top layer down. This is AC chestnut, I think, on a AC, what is this? This is crimson. Yep. Okay, so you can see how that curves over. And again, you're going to repeat that process 3 more times until you have a total of 4 of these. Okay, so the next layer is this layer here, and you can see I've already inked this as well. I'm going to go through that with you. And also, you can see that I've drawn the little veins on there. Oh boy, I got this, some glue. Get rid of that. Okay, so the way I did that is actually very simple. I'm going to grab a scrap piece of paper, and I think I used a ruler as well. Let me do that. Let's grab just a sheet of paper. Okay. And it doesn't matter if you ink the perimeter first or if you do it later. I don't think it really makes a huge difference. Let me see. Okay. So I took, you can use it also, you can use a scrap piece of paper too. So if you want, you just rip off a little sheet of paper. And what I did was, you'll notice that there's little score marks here at the bottom of this. Okay, you just line that score mark up with the very tip of the leaf there. And this section down here is not going to be visible, so you can actually just place your marker down and then just really quickly, you almost want it to kind of fade away and not be as deep towards the end. At least that's how I like it. If you want yours to be consistent throughout, then you're going to want to use the same pressure throughout, but I'm kind of letting it kind of taper off towards the end. Okay, so again, just lining it up with the score mark. And I'm actually not covering the score mark. I'm going over to the left just ever so slightly because obviously the marker is a little bit thick. So we need to account for that and try to make sure that we get that nice and centered. Okay, so again, I'm just going to place my marker down and just swipe, just like that. Okay, and if you don't make it all the way to the very edge, it's okay, because we're going to also ink this, and in doing so, you'll almost kind of finish that up. Okay, so here we go again, just like that. Nice quick stroke. You don't want to sit there and try to draw it in too slow, because you're bound to make a mess. Okay, so literally just swipe it right through. Okay. All right, so grab well, in my case, I'm going to use this gamma green. It's kind of like a bluish green. Okay, so actually I went with almost a kind of, oh boy, what's the color? Can't even think right now. Turquoise. Let me see if that matches up. Yeah, turquoise will work. Anything kind of bluish, greenish for the tips of these darker green leaves will definitely work. The idea is to find a tone or a color that's slightly darker than whatever paper or whatever color your base color is here to, you know, kind of get this effect. So I'm just, again, doing the same thing that I did with the leaves. And sometimes it helps to move things out of the way so you don't accidentally get ink on sections you don't want to get ink on. Okay. So you saw how I did the lines, very simple, and that was actually just a Sharpie. Had a fine point on it. Okay, and I don't know why I got flies in here. It could just be because this is what they call a pole barn. That's where my studio is. It's not exactly, it's a little rustic. You can hear the crickets in the background too. I might need to get this place sealed up a little bit better at some point, but it's fine for now. Kind of feels like a little more outdoorsy. But you get the idea here as far as the inking goes. There's really not much to it. Okay, and my game plan here for this video is just to get all the separate sections ready to go, and then we can kind of put it all together. Okay, so I'm getting all this inked, prepped, glued, and then we can start kind of building the wreath, because that's the really fun part. This is fun too. I've done a lot of inking on all 3 of these projects, and feel a lot better. It's definitely a great way to de-stress. Okay, so take a look at it, and if you feel that, well, maybe, you know, that one needs a little more here, I just want to darken it up a little bit, then do it. Better to do it now than wait until we have it in place, because then you've got other stuff that could potentially get in the way, and Then you can blemish another piece that maybe shouldn't have a turquoise ink on it, so definitely try to get it right before the next step. Okay, but I think that looks great. All right, so we've got this piece here. I did hit this with a little bit of brown around the outside. It's kind of hard to see that I did that because there's nothing to really contrast it with. Yeah, you can kind of see it, but either way, I'm not overly concerned about that one. We've got this beautiful set of feathers here. Now, I already glued this one down. So you've got two pieces that look like this, okay? You can see that. And obviously, this is my texture side. I went ahead and inked the edges on this with a nice orange. And this is the piece that's going to go on this section. Now, as you can imagine, this is going to go on our project like this, okay? So you've got one going to the left, one going to the right. This section, this little strip here, the overlay, obviously this one goes here. It will not fit here unless you flip it around, but then you lose your texture. So make sure you get the right one in the correct place. And when I did this, I kind of was tricky about it because you got a lot of little details there. So what I did was, first off, I put glue at the base, down at the bottom, and then I only put glue on one section, and I glued that down first. Okay, that's going to make it a lot easier because we do have a lot of surface area on here, and this thing is kind of wacky shaped. So and plus it's kind of flimsy. I don't want you to make a huge mess. So we're going to just glue the first section down, and so you can let this flop around and not even worry about it causing any problems. You just have to make sure that you get it lined up correctly, and then just press down on this first section here where we actually have the glue. Okay, there you go, just like that. That worked. Now take a look at the other section, make sure that it in fact will fit and sit correctly, and it does. Okay, so that part's down, which is great. Now we can literally just take, and you can see that part's glued down, these parts are loose, but that's fine. And then just stick your glue in there and start applying it. I forgot how I did this. I think I just kind of held it like that. Got these out of the way and just began applying my glue onto the next section. And I'm only going to do one at a time here, because again, these are both kind of flimsy little shapes. It helps to, yeah, it's really flimsy, but that's okay. I can actually take it and, nope. Yeah, I think I just kind of left it on my table so it wasn't flopping around so much. And if you do accidentally squeeze out too much glue, not a big deal. You can always just go in, kind of dab it with your finger to thin some of it out, and just wipe off any excess onto a piece of paper or a wet towel, in my case, a sponge. Okay, and then just line that up with the backing layer. And just press that down into place, give it a few seconds, and if by chance you missed a spot and didn't get glue on every little thing and you notice something's peeling up, just throw a little extra glue on a scrap piece of paper and just paint it under there. But mine's sticking pretty good. Okay, so we'll peel this up, and we got one section left here. Let me clean off my nozzle. Okay. And just begin applying glue to the last section. I'm going all the way down to the bottom. You can see that it's the bottommost section of this guy. And just working my way up. Okay, and I can just visually see where I have too much glue, so I'm going to wipe some of that off. I'm going to flip that around. And just get that nice and lined up. It should pretty much snap into place. You might have to give it a little bit of a nudge, but it should be all you need to do. Okay, so that's that. Grab my brayer, just press it down a little bit. And that is that, okay? That's how long you need to cut the wires, okay? So I have mine pre-cut, so you don't have to sit there and watch me cut wires, okay? And then we've got these pieces here. Let me move this out of the way. I don't really need to do any inking on this. I've already done the inking. Okay, you'll notice that there's two styles of these. There's one that has kind of like a little, three little markers on here. That's just to help you with the placement of this guy here. We'll do that later. But essentially, all we're doing here is putting glue on the inside of one of these. We're going to sandwich the wire in between two of these. Okay, so it doesn't really matter now that you've got them all cut. Oh, by the way, you need to cut 2 each of these because there's 4 on one side, 4 on the other. So you need to cut 2. Okay, so 2 6 3/4, 2 of the 5 1/2, 2 of the 9-inch, and 2 of the 6 1/4 pieces. Okay, and then we're going to pop this right on there, probably about halfway up, and then take the other half and just pop it right on top so that we sandwich the wire, and then just press down. Try to keep that wire nice and straight, and just press that down. Okay. Yep, keep that wire nice and straight. Give that a second to set. And then, while it's setting, I don't know if I did that fast enough, but I think it'll be okay. Yeah, that wire's staying pretty well put. Okay, and then you'll notice again, you've got the little markers there for the circle. I don't know if it's completely even necessary to have them there. What you want to do is take this and line it up with those markers. But essentially all it is the little circle is touching the very base of the little feather here, and it's in the center. Okay, so I think even without that, you could put that in the right spot. Okay, so again, I'm going to keep those separated so I know which ones are for the left and which ones are for the right. We're just going to repeat this process 3 more times so that we can create all, well, in my case, I already did 4. So you're going to repeat this process 7 more times until you have all 8 of these put together. Okay, so again, just putting glue on 1/2, putting the wire on there about halfway up, and grab, if you have the piece underneath that does not have the score marks, make sure you put the piece with the score marks on top. Again, if you goof that up, it's okay, because I think you can figure out where it needs to go even without those little score marks. But again, that's what those little score marks are for, to help you with the placement of this little circle. So just throw a little bit of glue right on that circle and pop it right between the little guides there and press down. Okay, and there's your next one. And I'm just going to repeat that process until we have all of them. And I think I'm missing one. Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is literally the last step in preparing all of the various sections. And the next thing we can do, actually there's one more thing, but it's very simple. It'll only take a minute. But we're going to get right into assembling the actual wreath itself, which, now that we've done all this work, will not be that difficult at all. So it should be fun, and it's going to get to that point where we're actually seeing the fruits of our labor and something beautiful actually happening. Now, one other thing too, I pre-prepped a bow to put on top on the actual on these feathers here. Okay, so if you want to make a bow, definitely make a bow. I should do an updated video of the bow dabra, which is what I use to make bows. It just makes it easier for me. I'm by no means a professional bow maker, but thanks to my handy bow dabra, I kind of am. So maybe we should add a link to the bow dabra in the supply list section there. Okay, so I've got one more to go. Again, and I hit this with a little bit of purple ink just along the very, very, very outer edge. And it's actually a chalk ink, so it almost looks like it's glowing, but that's optional. This piece is so dark and so small that I don't know that inking is worth it, but I figure, you know what, we've inked everything else. I'm gonna add some ink to that too. Okay, so got that nice and centered. Press that down, and while it's sitting there, we'll take our little circle, get some glue on it and pop it right on there. Okay. There we go. All right. So last thing here, this is the little hanger mechanism for the actual back of the wreath. And what we want to do is we're just going to reinforce it. So this is the main piece and this is just the reinforcement piece. It's going to go right on this shape, right on the back of itself, basically. So we're just going to put some glue right on this part, just the hanger part, not the tab part. We don't want to put any glue on that. And just glue that right to the back of it. You're not even going to see this piece, but again, it's going to play kind of an important role, especially if you want to hang this up or give it to someone that wants to hang it up. Okay, so that's that. All right, so we've got everything ready to go, and we are ready to start putting this thing together. Okay, so let's first start with this black piece. This is, well, this is kind of set the tone for everything else. All right, so I'm looking at these two pieces here. You'll notice that one of these has a little number 1 cut into it, okay? And then this one has a number 2. Now the numbers are roughly going to be right on top of each other. Now I'll also notice is that there's some cutouts here. They're kind of strange looking cutouts. And then you'll notice that there's some score marks here. So now these cutouts are put there to help you find these little markers here. And that's where this tab is going to go. It's going to go on the back though, so don't worry about that just yet. But when you put this 1 on top of the 2, and obviously we're going to put glue on this in just a second, make sure you can see these little markers right here. There's one to the left and one to the right of the 2. Make sure you can see those little markers through the little cutouts there. And also on the back, when you do that, if you have it right, you'll notice that there's some cutouts here, and those are there to help you see these score marks. And that's, again, just to help you get everything properly aligned. Okay, so let me do this real quick here. Okay, so there's a 1 here and a 2 here. The 1's literally going to go right on top of the 2. And through these little cutouts here, you should see the little markers on piece number 2. Okay, and then again, if we flip this over, through these holes here, you should see a set of score marks. Okay, you'll have to maybe lift this up and look closely, but you will see them. All right, but either way, we're going to get this in place real quick. And this here, no one's really going to see this piece. So 1, we need to work quickly because we've got a lot of surface area. And 2, we also want to make sure that we get enough glue on here because, well, for 1, it's a long piece and this glue is going to start to dry quickly. But I wouldn't worry about it being like impeccable as far as your work goes. But at the same time, don't drain it, or not drain it, but cake it with glue. I'm going to do a nice little ring around the outside as well. And I think that's good. So there's my back piece, there's my number 1. And again, don't worry too much about making a mess here. If you happen to make a mess, just make sure that those little cutouts, you can see through these little, actually, yeah, the little markers should be visible through these little cutouts here. And then use your fingers to kind of feel and make sure that this is in fact sitting on top of itself correctly. And now it's time to get glue everywhere. Yeah, don't worry about that. I don't think, yeah, you're not even gonna see that. It's okay. I'm still gonna wipe it off. That was a goof. I'm sure that's not the last time that'll happen to me. But anyway, not a big deal. Okay. All right, so we've got these 2 pieces put together. And I see my score marks. I see my score marks. Yeah, everything looks good. Everything is nice and lined up. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do, might as well get this out of the way. Flip this over. And on this section here, you should be able to see the score mark that matches up with this angle here, the bottom corner of this little hanger. Okay, and that's going to tell us exactly where we need to put it. Okay, that's going to be our center. So just put a little bit of glue on this tab here. Okay, and I'm kind of going a little bit thicker than usual. and line it up with the little marker there. How's that look, Leo? Looks good. Okay, and we'll just press that down. So we're only putting glue on the tab, not on this. So you can see here, once this really sets, this is what we can actually hang this on. Okay, but that's that. And next up, you're going to start applying these layers here. So again, we've got a total of 4 of these. This is our first layer. So the beautiful part about this is that we have some score marks here, and these score marks are to help you with the correct placement for each of these sections. Okay, so just going to pop these in between these score mark layers. All right, so let's get this finished up now. And again, you'll notice that we have score marks here, and we have score marks here, and here, and here. It's basically creating 4 quadrants. And we're going to take these and line them up with the score marks. We also want to make sure that they're lined up with the actual frame or the base. Okay, so we can begin by applying glue. Now you don't need to put any glue on the actual sections here, just within the strip. Okay, and you can go a little bit heavier here. Definitely get that glue out to the very edges. It's very simple at this point. And just again, line it up with the little score marks. Make sure that it is nice and flush with the interior. Mostly the interior is going to be the most important part, okay? But that's pretty much it, just like that. And then we can move on to the next one. And we'll get our glue on the back, just like I just did, all the way out to the edge. Okay, and look for that score mark there, but also make sure that you butt that up against the other layer there. Okay, and check the inner perimeter here. Make sure that feels nice and flush in there. And that feels good, looks good. There we go. Okay. All right, just rotate that around. And you can see this one's going to go here now. And that matches up with the score marks there. So let's get our glue on the back of this, all the way out to the very edge. And we'll line that up there first. And that should automatically just kind of hit that score mark there. Okay, there we go. Moving right along. Let me move this out of the way. And same thing. Get your glue right in within the perimeter of, or the area of the straight line there. Okay, and line that up, and then that should fit in just like a little puzzle piece. Perfect. Beautiful. Okay, make sure that's nice and flat there. There we go. Okay, so the first layer's in place. Next, we're going to grab this section. And the cool thing is, I really thought this through. You'll notice that we have another set of score marks here. And for this, we just need to get that centered on those little score marks. Okay, and that automatically, what that does is it takes these and offsets them so they're not right on top of each other. So there's really, well, it's kind of, we've kind of figured it all out for you. You don't really need to do anything special. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm actually going to put glue on this surface here, and I'm going to keep it between the 2 sections of score marks. Okay, just like that. You can go all the way up here, all the way down there, and just get that nice and centered between the 2 sections of score marks. And again, make sure that you have it nice and flush with this inner ring here, just like that. Looks great. I'm moving along here. And there's the other score mark there. Get your glue on here, right before this little score mark. And pop that right into place. You want to make sure they're kind of buttoned up against each other. You might need to leave a little bit of a gap, but not much. There we go. Just like that. And moving right along to the next piece. We get our glue between that score mark and this one. Okay. And get that lined up, and that hit the score mark perfectly. There we go. Now, after we get all this in place, if we want to take and curl these a little bit more to create more separation, we can. It's totally not off the table at all. Okay, and the last one here for this section. There we go. And this one again should fit like a little puzzle piece. And it does. Beautiful. Okay, there we go. Press that down into place. Okay, now with this next section here, the idea is we don't have score marks on this because we don't really need to worry too much about, well, actually these are going to go right on top of this section here. Now, what I would suggest doing so that we can actually hide those seams, let's see here. Yeah, we can actually hide the seam at least down here. Well, you know what? I don't think that really matters. You know what? Let's just keep it simple and let's just do it this way. Let's just line this up nice and flat. But before we do that, I do want to take and I want to make sure I don't get glue on stuff, obviously. We are going to curl these petals a little bit just to kind of give them a little bit of dimension so they're not just sitting flat. So literally just taking and putting the piece of paper between my finger and a dowel and then curling it towards me and then running the dowel through just like that. And that's going to help kind of shape this piece. Okay, and we're going to pop that right in between or right on the same section there, just like that. Okay, and to do that, whoops, you got to be careful with these. I'm kind of poking the tips here and bending them. We're going to put glue on just the bottom section of this. We don't need a whole heck of a lot here. Just keep it right at the bottom, like so. Okay, and you want to line that up right on top of the previous layer. Okay, there we go, just like that. All right, grab the next section. Yeah, this is looking pretty sharp already. A lot of beautiful colors and a lot of great little detail, the inking. Yeah, it's really nice, actually. Okay, so this one's gonna go right here. Just like that. Again, just making sure that we're keeping it nice and flush with the inner ring here, the inner circle, the little cutout there. Okay, I'm gonna rotate that. And let's get this trained. Shouldn't take more than a few seconds. Okay. Get our glue on there. And get that nice and lined up. We do have that little scallop piece is going to go right on top of this, and it's going to hide any little imperfections that we may have. But that looks great. Okay, rotate that one more time. I love the symmetrical feel of all this. It's almost like a mandala. And then, of course, we've got a few little elements to, well, it'll still be symmetrical, but it'll throw off the whole mandala effect, but that's okay. Okay, so that goes right there, and you get the idea here. It's a pretty simple project, especially when it comes time to get everything glued in place. Okay, so there you have it. That looks really cool, just like that. Okay, so now what we want to do is find the top. Okay, this is our top, and you can see there's a seam right here. Okay, so I'm going to kind of put this on one of my grids here just to remind me that that's the top. Okay, now on this piece here, you'll notice that there's a little V on here. Okay, we want that V centered on the bottom seam here. Okay. because, and I'll show you here, this piece, to help us with the placement of the feather, is going to get glued right to that V. Okay, but we want that V to be dead center on our piece here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put glue on this. And we've got a lot of little scallops that we need to hit here, so I gotta kind of work quickly. And if I'm gonna leave this on my surface, actually move this out of the way so I don't blemish the work that I've already done. And that's one hard thing to work with sometimes, is floppy little pieces of paper, because they don't really, you really have to kind of support them from behind. Otherwise, the application of the glue is very inconsistent. So I'm just doing kind of circles around the little areas here on these scallops. Just like that. You can see those are already drying. Find that little V. I have to double check one more time and make sure that I've got my center. Okay, that's my top. This is my bottom. It's not my real bottom. I'm sitting on my real bottom. And that little V needs to be right dead center on that seam there. Okay, perfect. I got a little bit of glue on there. Scrape that off and press that down. Perfect. Okay, so that's that. All right. And now the little feathers, these little guys here, are actually going to go on next. Okay, so we need to get these glued down. And I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. All right, so it's time to put our little individual feathers in place. And just to straighten these wires out, if you just take a dowel and run it through, don't worry about the fact that it's curved like that, but we want to try to get that wire nice and straight. Okay, so, or at least as straight as we can get it. And then flatten out the bottom, straighten it out, I should say. And don't worry if it's kind of off to the side. We actually want it to curve to the side anyway. Okay, so I'm gonna just put a little bit of hot glue on there and just get that to stay. So that's the 9-inch one. Okay, now find your other 9-inch piece. And where are you? I think that's this guy here. You might need to measure him really quick just to make sure that is not the other one. Where'd he go? I got 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, there it is. Let me make sure that's the other one. So what I'm going to do right now, just to make this easier on myself as far as locating them, I'm going to stack them on top of each other like this. Okay, and then I'll put them on the corner of my mat here. Let me bring this up so you can see it. You can see the 0, 0 here. I'll just lay that right about there, and then I can just find the wire that is closest to 9 inches. So that's this one here. And I'll just use that as kind of a guide so I know which piece I'm grabbing. I want to make sure I grab the right one. Okay, and now this one needs to curve over this way. So I'm going to hold it and I'm going to train this wire so that it curves that way. Okay, so like that. We'll straighten the bottom out. And we can always adjust it after the fact here, but let me throw a little more hot glue right in that area there. And don't worry if it gonna caked up. We're gonna end up putting that little feather on there anyway. So that's okay. Just try to get it matched up as closely as you can. Nice and centered. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right, next we're going to find the 2 shortest ones. So let's find the 2 shortest ones. I'm looking through my stash here, and I see them right here. These 2 are my 2 shortest. Okay, and one is going to go this way, and one is going to go the other way. So hold it, and then train the wire. We're really doing this mostly to straighten it out so it doesn't look bad. Okay, but it also just kind of naturally curves it for us too. So that's kind of a win-win. And we're gonna put this one here. It's gonna go this way. So grab your hot glue, and I'm gonna move it over to the right slightly so that I don't end up with a huge blob of glue right in that area. Okay. So that one's gonna go there. Try to keep them roughly at the same height right here on the little scallop there. Okay. So there's that one. Here's my next shortest one. We need it to curve that way. So I'm gonna take and just kind of train the wire. There we go. And that one's gonna go here. Again, moving it over to the left, just slightly. Throw my hot glue on there. Kind of swirl it around to get rid of that little wispy, that annoying wispy thing. Okay, so you can see how that's kind of already looking very symmetrical. And we are going to adjust the wires, but we're going to worry about that later once everything is actually in place. Now I'm just kind of taking, the glue's not hot anymore, but I'm kind of smushing it down so that it really stays. Okay, next we have 4 left. You want to find the longest. There's 2 longer ones and 2 shorter ones. So find the 2 longer ones. They're barely longer, just by a ½ an inch. Okay, so there's 1 and there's 2. And again, we're going to take and just kind of straighten the wire out. I know we're curling it, but we're getting rid of any little kind of dents in the middle of the wire. Okay, so this one's going to go this way. Straighten out the bottom. And let's put a little bit of glue just to the left of the previous one. Okay. And let's get that glued down. Just like that. And then we'll grab the other one. Get that wire straightened out slightly. And that's going to go here. Okay, well, that one doesn't curve as much, but that's okay. We're gonna finesse that once this is all said and done. Don't worry about it just yet. The feather that goes on top of this is actually going to be pop dotted, so the fact that we've got a blob of hot glue here, don't let that concern you. It's okay. All right, and then we have 2 pieces left, 2 of these left, so go ahead and straighten out those wires. And throw a little bit of glue here, just to the left of it, like so. Ideally, you want to try to keep the amount of hot glue that you have there somewhat at the same height as the pop dots. And even if you don't, it's okay. It's not going to make or break it. Okay, so now this one needs to curve that way, so we'll just take it and curve that, like so. And add our glue here, just to the right of the last one. And there we go. Okay. And just make sure that's all nice and covered with the hot glue, and we'll let that set as is right there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this thing, and we're going to, wait, I think it goes like this. Yeah, like, no, it goes like this, there we go. Just like that. We're going to take and connect these 2 pieces using this little center piece here, like so. Okay, so all we need to do is put glue on, let's just do one at a time. We'll put it on this section first, and just line that up. The center should be, the end of this should be right in the center of this little piece. And press that down. Okay. And then we can take our glue, put it on the other half. And get that glued into place. Now I have got a little bit of, had a little ink explosion there. But that's okay, because that's all going to be covered up with a bow anyway, so it's not a huge deal. Okay, so it actually is going to sit like this. I'm going to bring this down, and this is going to go, well, the bottom of this is going to match up with that little V, wherever you had that V, which is technically under here, but that's okay. As long as you get it right on there, roughly where the glue is, that's kind of where you want it, okay? So, with that said, we're gonna have to, well, first off, I'm probably gonna hot glue this and then use foam squares to kind of keep the rest of it elevated. So, and that's nice because it'll also kind of hold this in place and add like an extra layer on top of all this wire. So go ahead and throw some hot glue on there, just pretty much on that blob of stuff. Okay. And again, now remember, this is the center right here. This is that little seam. So try to match up the center of this with the center of that seam. And you want it roughly right about there. And just press that down into place. Try to keep that nice and centered as it sets. And I've got glue on my fingers here. Try not to get it all over the place. There we go. And there's my favorite friend here, Mr. Wispy Glue guy. Get out of here. All over the place. Okay. I'm going to kind of push it down, elevate it a little bit, create some separation there. Okay, and then, let's see, do I have that centered? Yeah, it looks good. Okay. Now, the these little guys here, so at this point, just to kind of get them out of the way, we can start kind of bending these a little bit and getting them into their final little position. Okay, so this one's going to be roughly in this area here. Okay, now if you want, he is going to go right there. If you really want to keep him in place and keep everything nice and symmetrical, you can let it just kind of dangle if you want. But for the sake of kind of keeping everything symmetrical and in place, if you want, you can put a little foam square on the back of this and literally kind of let it sit like that. So that's what I'm going to do, because I want this to look nice and symmetrical and not dangle around too much. Okay, so I'm going to put that one right there, like so. Now, let me change that up a little bit. There we go. I'll grab a foam square for this next long guy, peel that off, and I'm going to put him in between the same section here. So he's going to go right here, like so. Okay. Can kind of straighten out that little bend in that wire. All right, so that's looking sharp. Okay, now the next one here, pull this one up. This guy, well, this guy, let me see, make sure I got the right one. Yep. Okay, so this guy here, this guy is going to be poking out through here, right roughly in this area. And this guy's going to be under here. Excuse me. So we want this one just kind of poking out in between, or just underneath this nice little brown feather. Okay, and he's going to be looking like about there. Okay, this last one here, this one's actually going to dangle. We're going to let that one dangle. And this one here is going to go right about here. So we can actually let these last two dangle. I think the top ones, just because we've got gravity working against us, it'll be helpful to use the foam squares to keep them in place. But these last two, you just kind of let them dangle. I think that's fine. Okay, let me grab the second one on this side and pull this one down. And pull this one down. I'll keep them roughly in the same spot. Okay, and this guy's gonna go right here. Oops, where the heck did that glue come from? Oh, that was almost a disaster. Oh, that ain't good. Okay, grab my foam square here and put that on the bottom of this guy. Peel that off. Got glue all over me. You guys are always wondering, Leo, how come you don't always have glue all over you? Well, you know what? This time, in this video, I do. How about that? Okay. All right, so that looks pretty much symmetrical, I'd say. Okay. All right, so last thing to do here, again, we can always kind of finesse these things here, but all that's left here is to add your little bow, and that's going to go right at the base of this guy here, like so. Okay, and I can kind of move this out of the way so the bow's not obstructing it. Let me fix that a little bit. And we'll pop that right about there. And we'll get that. I'm gonna hot glue that, but for now, just because I may want to move it a little bit, I'm just gonna add a pop dot on there to hold it in place. And you know what, that's really it for this project, guys. It's really not that bad. And I'm very pleased with the end result here. Let's get our bow in place. And there it is. All right, so let's take a look at final result. Look at that. That looks fantastic. And that's gonna make a great little addition to pretty much any fall decor in your home. Look at that. Anyway, very cool. Turned out great. Hope you guys enjoyed the process. If you make this or anything from our new bundle, I would love to see it, and so would the rest of our community. So head on over to your Facebook and do a search for Dreaming Tree Group, or you can use this little URL that pops up at the bottom and join myself and the over 30, almost 31,000 other dreamers that inspire us daily. So I know it's still hot and muggy out there, but happy almost fall. And as always, I look forward to crafting with you again. Hey, thanks for crafting along with me. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, check out some of our other videos. And also, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to visit our site and check out our free SVG section, where we have over 140 free SVG files complete with assembly videos. I look forward to crafting with you soon.